The most important thing is to be able to connect with people. If you can connect with the values that you have, then the outside thing is just decoration, I would say. It's a matter of habits, of traditions, but each of us have a different way of doing things. Learn to go without judgment. We share certain values, and that's what matters.
Welcome to International Love Story, the podcast about intercultural relationships. My name is Christina, and in today's podcast episode, I would like to welcome Emi. Emi is originally from Ecuador, but she's living in Germany right now. The reason why she's living in Germany is her husband, who's from India. They're both currently living together, so after a period of time dating on distance, they were able to close the distance. They met in 2017, but honestly, this is all I know about how they met, about their differences, and that's definitely a story Emi can tell much better than I could possibly do. So let's give a warm welcome to Emi. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's dive directly into it. Who are you? What are you doing? Tell us all about you.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you very much for the invitation first, and I'm glad to be able to share a little bit about our story. My name is Emi. I am Ecuadorian. I am 29 years old, and I am currently living in Berlin, in Germany, with my husband, Anish, who is Indian. And we recently got married under the Indian tradition. It was November last year. So we are living here in Berlin already since 2021. And we basically have a life divided into at least three different countries. And also we have to deal with languages differences, cultural differences. I will say we are quite an international couple.
Definitely. I mean, as you've mentioned, in your case, there are different cultures coming together. So that's the Indian culture, the Ecuadorian culture, and now the German culture, which obviously, being a German and having a husband from Argentina who used to live in Germany with me, there's quite some, experience of my own I could share about living as an intercultural couple in Germany. So I'm happy that you ended up in Berlin. I feel like Berlin is very international and it doesn't feel like Germany anymore. But I know that this was not always the case. So let's start from the beginning a little bit. As mentioned, 2017, this is the date or the year you guys met. You did not meet in Germany. You met in Brugge, right? If I remember correctly.
In Bruges, in Belgium.
So what's the story behind that?
So in 2017, I finished my bachelor studies and I decided to do a Euro trip with my best friend. So we had this crazy idea of cover as much as possible through 1 month. And we visited different cities, different countries in Europe. And back then, Anish, my husband, he was studying in Germany, in Cologne. He was doing his master's. I think it was a matter of destiny that we happened to coincide in Bruges. There was a beer tasting event in one of these hostels. So it was like a typical hostel event where people from all over the world will come together and there will be music. And the idea is to share with other people. And it was quite interesting that was the first interaction that we had, although we didn't really talk that much to each other because it was a big group, right? So there were people from all over the world. And me and my friend, we were very much interested in listening everyone's stories and we were having fun. There was music, there was beer, but also it was the only night that we were staying in that city because, as I mentioned, we were trying to cover as much as possible. So the next day we left Bruges and we went to, I believe we had to take a flight to Berlin. So that was my interaction with Anish. And he was also with his friends. So it was basically that we were all in the same group. And then we exchanged social media, but everyone from the group, we added each other to social media. And that was it. I finished my Europe trip. I went back to my country and I had my normal life back there until one day Anish wrote me or replied to a story that I upload to Instagram because he was asking me something about my country. He was interested about South America, and that's how it started. Basically, we started chatting in a very friendly way, and for me it was the very first interaction with the Indian culture, with an Indian in general. So it was also very interesting to get to know more about him. And then after that, basically it started everything as a friendship. And I think out of a curiosity from his side about my country, about my culture in general, but also from my side, because I didn't know much about India, suddenly we realized that we were talking quite often, like not only via message, but after some days we started having video calls, and then the video calls will last more and more time, and we developed a very nice friendship. It was also very interesting for me because back then my English was not very good, so it was a challenge also to talk to him. But I took it as something fun to do, like to improve my English, try a little bit to improve another language. And that's how we continue talking for several months. And I think there was a point where we decided that, okay, there is something happening here. It's not anymore a friendship, but there are some feelings that are getting involved. And I think for both of us, it was scary. To be honest, it was, quite scary because we knew that we were far from each other. There was no clarity of what was going to happen, right? Like we realized that we were developing these romantic feelings towards each other, but there was no clarity of what was going to happen. However, we didn't allow this to influence that much our relationship, and we continue behaving as friends, but somehow we became very close to each other, talking every day, sharing with each other what was happening in our lives. And I think everything became a little bit more clear when he decided to visit me in Ecuador. So in 2018, December 2018, he went to Ecuador to visit me, and he stayed with me, my family, for 1 month. And I think that was the start of the official relationship, romantic relationship.
For how long did he stay? For 1 month?
For 1 month, yes.
Wow. And what did you tell your family? Like, hey, I'm having a friend over just for you to know. I hope that's fine. Or how did you introduce him?
Well, it was also difficult because my parents kind of got to know that I was talking to this Indian friend, because I would disappear in the middle of the day and I would be talking on the phone. And they were asking me, they were kids, like, what is happening? Who are you talking to? And I told them, yes, I have this friend who is interested in South America and he might come one day. Until Anish told me, okay, I have the flights, so I'm coming for sure. And I had to tell my parents, well, he is actually coming and we are actually trying to figure out what is this, because there is for sure some feeling, there is some romantic feeling there, but of course we are not sure what is going to happen. So my parents, I can imagine, like any parents, were a little bit concerned about this, but also they have been always very supportive with me and with our relationship. So I think they trust my decision and they were okay with it.
So once Anish arrived and was welcomed into your family, how did it go from there? How did you spend your days? How did you spend family time? What was his impression of Ecuador? Because I've never been, I would love to go. So I'm very curious about the whole setting, about the feelings, and obviously how it developed from there on.
Yeah, it was a lovely time. I remember I was very anxious before he arrived because it was this feeling that I am talking to this guy every day, but somehow it doesn't feel that I know him in person, right? It doesn't feel that I have known him for so long. And I think he was also feeling the same. And I think it was even more difficult for him to come to a country he didn't know much about. And also, he could not talk a word in Spanish. And he didn't know anyone else in Ecuador. So I think it was really, really a risky thing for him to do, to travel alone and just go to this country and just to meet this girl who could easily not be the person he was thinking about. But luckily for both of us, it was what we thought. It was perfect. We enjoy. We travel around Ecuador, but also we went to Peru and we visit Machu Picchu. I think that month really brought us together because we kind of, all the intensity of that month allowed us to discover in each other the qualities of a partner. When we were traveling together, just the two of us, we knew how each other would react to stressful situations. We knew how we were in situations where we are not happy, or when we are stressed, or when we are hungry, I don't know. And then also he spent Christmas and New Year's with me and my family. For me, that was magical. That was something that made me believe, like, okay, this can be the guy, this could be the guy. During that time, my family was going through a difficult moment because my grandmom was sick. So it was like not the normal Christmas or New Year celebration. However, he was there for me, and it felt like, okay, I feel the support and I feel what I want to feel from a partner. So he was basically someone who my parents and my family accepted from the beginning. They realized how good of a person he is. And the thing was also, when the days were coming over, then when his flight was coming closer, then we started to feel this fear of, okay, what is going to happen after this? And luckily, we started talking and we said, okay, I think we both are sure that we would like to be with each other. So we need to plan in advance what is going to happen. How are we going to make it happen? And then we decided that we will work towards this final goal, which was for me to come to Germany, because back then I was already thinking about studying a master's degree in Europe. But I would say that I had this extra motivation of looking for a master's degree in Germany after I met Anish.
You discussed like what's going to be next, how do we make it work, and the decision was more or less made before he flew back to Germany that you will move to Germany eventually. How long did it take until you were able to move? So how many months or years were in between Ecuador and moving to Germany?
So Anish was visiting December 2018, and I moved to Germany in September 2020. So yeah, almost 2 years. And yeah, it was not an easy thing. Like, we didn't really know that it was going to take that long. But I will say that also we knew that it was not going to be that easy, especially because for me, I had the idea of studying a master's in Europe, but my idea was always maybe Spain because of the language facility. But Germany was not really in my mind, to be honest. I was not really close to the German culture. I didn't know much about the German options or universities in general. And I also didn't know anything about German language. And I was in the process of improving English. So my only option was to look for a master's in English, but also become better at English and start learning German. And so we kind of set this time frame of maybe we will take at least 1 year to make it happen. And we work with that.
Mm. And it took a little bit longer than 1 year. Were you able to see each other in between?
Yes, in 2019, in summer 2019, I came to Germany to visit him only for 15 days because back then I was also working full time. I didn't have that many holidays. I was also studying English, studying German, doing so many things in my life. So, but that was at least 15 days I could visit him. And after that, I had the plan to come back in March 2020, but then the pandemic hit. So then we didn't see each other for almost 1 year until I moved permanently to Germany in September.
How was it for you, may I ask? Because honestly, to me, it sounds like, first of all, there was a lot to figure out as a couple. And I know that because I've been there. So I'm speaking out of my own experience as well. And then on the other hand, you knew that eventually there will be the point where you have to say goodbye to everything you know in Ecuador to start a new life, moving, in your case, for love. I did the same back then in 2017 when moving to Miami, and also learning or improving your English and learning German and all the paperwork that was involved, finding studies like applying in Germany. How did it feel for you? And how did you split the responsibilities? Because I'm really wondering, again, that sounds like a lot to handle all at once.
Yes, looking back at that time, I think it was a difficult time. It was not an easy task to address all the things that we had to do at the same time. But it kind of helped us also that we were so busy and focused on one single goal that we didn't have the chance or the time even to doubt the relationship or to doubt the decision itself. And something that it was also very, very, yeah, I will say that it was very helpful for me. Anish, from the very beginning, it was never a request of his that he said, you have to come to Germany or something like that. He told me, you think about it and make your decision based on what you think it will be the best for you. Not necessarily for the relationship. I mean, yeah, it would be great if we manage to live at some point together or at least in the same country. But think about what is the best option for you. And as I mentioned, I had already this dream of studying abroad. And I said, like, okay, maybe this is the extra motivation I needed to just make it happen and make it happen faster, maybe. But I wanted to, anyways, come to or be in a different country, push myself to learn languages and just be outside in the world, And that was, I think, the thing that helped us to overcome and like to deal with all the mess that was to make it happen until I managed to come to Germany.
So you make yourself aware that you're obviously also responsible for your decisions and you just go for it. And obviously you knew if anything, there's always another option. Your dream first like was to live and study abroad, ideally in Spain. Now it was Germany, and obviously it worked out in your case because now you're living together in Berlin. So you made it work, you closed the distance. I'm especially wondering the time in between. I mean, you haven't seen each other for quite some time. And again, of my own experience, out of our own experience, it is a little bit tricky if you have this big goal in mind. If the big goal is we would love to close distance. Obviously, we would love to wake up next to each other every day. And then you do have some steps to take into consideration because honestly, it's not only packing your things and then you just leave the country and that's it. Like, especially emotionally wise, there's just so much you have to take into consideration. And sometimes it just feels like everything happens all at once. And sometimes it feels like I'm not sure if I can even tackle it. And what helps, obviously, what you've just mentioned is that you have the big goal in mind and that you are aware that you're both working on the big goal while also knowing that you've made the decision. So you're responsible for your own happiness. So no matter how the outcome will be, it's your responsibility as well. Again, a lot of thoughts to take into consideration, a lot of feelings, emotions to take into consideration. So I'm really wondering if it comes to this, like the emotional part of moving abroad, planning the next steps, what advice do you have?
Yeah, well, I think the main advice is to really think it through because, as you said, it's a very big decision and you don't want to regret that. But also, I would say that I didn't allow myself doubt too much about my decisions. Once I took the decision, I didn't want to second guess myself, because it is very easy to be influenced by other people. I guess, like, it is quite common to have people around you that are concerned that whether you are making the right decision or not. And I remember back then, a lot of people were also, including my families or close friends, they will be like kind of asking me again and again, are you sure what you're doing? But what if it is not working? What if you go to Germany and you don't like it, you know? So I guess it's like, it is a difficult thing, but if you are sure that that's the thing that you want, then just go for it. And also, one thing that helped me a lot was not to have a very big expectation. We always talk with Anish the worst scenario, like what happened if I moved to Germany and we just cannot make it happen and we are not good to each other and we just break up. I was thinking, and he always also reassured me that it's not the worst decision to anyways go abroad, learn another language, and then if you have to go back to your country, then you will have an extra experience to share with the world. I mean, yes, it might be difficult to break up and then go back, but it is part of life. So if you are not scared, if you imagine the worst scenario and it's not that bad, then maybe it's not that bad of a decision. Maybe just go for it.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for mentioning this as well, because at some point it's just so overwhelming, and there are some thoughts where you ask yourself, is that the right decision? But exactly what you've just mentioned, that's the healthy approach, that in the worst case, if you have to get back to your home country, it's not a failure. It's a learning. You've grown over the time, and with a new set of skills, you can start something new. And honestly, it's easier said than done. And obviously, in your case, again, you're still in Germany, so you were able to work through it. I guess culture shock, but those are parts that we get into later within our conversation. So, yeah, so the big day came. It was September 2022, no, 2020, you said, after the pandemic slowed down a little bit. So you took the opportunity to move to Germany. How was it? Like, how did Anish welcome you? And what was your mindset at that point? How did you feel? Like, let's just try to give us an idea of the first days of your arrival in Germany, and also obviously taking into consideration that there's this person that you love, but you have to readapt as well.
Yes. Well, it was also not the normal process, because I was supposed to visit him in March 2020, but since the pandemic hit, all the flights got canceled. And I was also very, very afraid that I will not get any admission for any university. It was unsure or unclear during that time if universities were even working at all and if they were going to admit new students. However, in the middle of the pandemic, I remember also receiving this news at home that I was admitted to a university and they requested me to be from October onwards. I had to be in Germany. But back then, also the embassies were closed. People were still not having a normal life, at least in Ecuador. So I think I was just in a status of I had to give everything to make it happen. And I really didn't have the chance to think it through, because it didn't feel that I was going from Ecuador forever. I didn't really have a farewell party with my friends or family, because I couldn't say goodbye to many members of my family or my friends because of the pandemic. So it was kind of surreal, all the situation. But when I reached to Germany, I reached to Berlin and Anish welcomed me in Berlin. However, my head was not about we're going to have a nice time as a couple or something. My head was, okay, I am coming to Germany to study a master's, to complete the study here, and in the future maybe try to stay in Germany. So immediately after 1 week of being in Germany, I moved to Lüneburg, which is close to Hamburg, where my university is located. And we were again in a long distance relationship, although not that long, not that far from each other. But still, we used to see each other only once a month sometimes because of he was working, I was studying, and also pandemic, so it was not that easy to see each other, and therefore the distance was closer, but there was still distance, and we didn't really have the adaptation process yet.
When did the adaptation process came? At what point?
When I finished my master's studies in 2021, yes, no, 2022, I moved to Berlin. So I finished my studies and I decided to write my master thesis from Berlin. And that was actually the time where I think we both felt the process of, okay, now we need to adapt ourselves to the fact that we are living together, that we need to have a routine together, because we were so used to be far from each other and to have a routine, an individual routine, that it was quite tough to live together, to be together.
What did you learn during that time after moving together? Because I've mentioned before, in your case, there are several cultural differences. I guess at that time you've kind of adapted to the German culture we've been talking about in the beginning before hitting the record button, how difficult it is, for example, to make friends in Germany. It really takes a lot of time. And in Ecuador, or in South America in general, it's easier. I mean, it's just thinking about like here in Argentina, I have more friends than I think I've ever did have in Germany, which is very interesting because everyone is just very inviting and they just let you into their lives immediately, welcome you with open arms. So again, you had this German cultural difference. I guess that was a shock in the beginning after moving to Germany. You bring your own culture with you, and then you're dating an Indian. So how did that work out?
Yeah, when I first moved to Germany, I think at least for the first year, I was in this honeymoon phase where everything was new, everything was nice. Also, I was in the student life phase where it's easier to make friends because you are in the university, then you get to know people from different countries, but also Germans, and it's easier to make friends. However, I think when I struggled the most was when I moved to Berlin, because then again I had to leave the community I created in this city, in this small town with my friends from the university. Then I had to leave those friends and come to Berlin and start from zero. And my husband, he had already kind of his life created here in Berlin. He was working already for some time. He had his colleagues, his friends, his roommates, and I felt like an outsider coming to Berlin and like not having really a community here. So I think at least for the first months it was quite difficult. It was also during winter, which is tougher for us Latin Americans to experience, especially when you don't have a community and you don't feel like that much welcome. Then we also struggle with looking for a flat because Berlin, the flat market in Berlin it's quite a mess. So we also had that struggle. And I think there were different factors that just came in, and I would say like those months were problematic to say the least. But at the same time, I think it was a challenge for us that helped us to understand, okay, first of all, it is a good thing that we are living in a third country. So we were sharing the same struggles. And I would talk to my husband, and Anish would tell me, well, I also struggled the same when I moved to Germany. First, I had my friends in my university, then I have to move to a different city, then I have to create new friends. So it is like that. It was very nice that at least I felt that he was sharing the struggle with me, and that he could share also some advices because he went through the same process as me. And we are in a neutral zone, kind of, because then he's also an Indian, but he has adapted himself to the European standards. And me as a Latina, I also have adapted myself to the German culture. So we are both going through the same processes and we both support each other in that way.
And the first few weeks of living together, would you like to share a little bit more about that? How did you adapt to one another, sharing a routine or building a routine? How was that for you guys?
Yeah. It was okay. I think it was mainly difficult because of this problem with the flat. When I moved in, he was living in a small studio and there was not enough space for both of us. And we were looking for a flat, but it took at least 6 months to find a flat where we both could feel comfortable. So the beginning it was a struggle also to getting adapted to each other's routine. He had to go to work, whereas I was staying at home writing my thesis. And so for me, it was more challenging, I would say. But to the point of cultural differences, I don't think we had too many cultural differences when we move in together because we both kind of adapted good when we moved to Germany, at least for the first year. We are now used to the German culture a little bit more. Also to getting adapted to each other's routine, he had to go to work, whereas I was staying at home writing my thesis. And so for me, it was more challenging, I would say. But to the point of cultural differences, I don't think we had too many cultural differences when we move in together because we both kind of adapted good when we moved to Germany, at least for the first year. We are now used to the German culture a little bit more.
Which is very interesting that you've adopted so fast. At least it sounds like you adopted quite fast. Moving on in your love story, talking about your cultures a little bit more. As mentioned at the beginning, Anish was able to meet you in Ecuador. He just bought his flight tickets, he met your family. Eventually, you were also able to, visit his family in India. When was that and how was that for you guys?
Yeah, that was also a big step. That happened in 2021. It was also, there was still the pandemic going on, so it was not an easy thing. We had to go and had the quarantine and also do the test, the COVID test, and we couldn't travel that much around India. We stay only in Mumbai. But also, it was very interesting because his parents, as all the Indian parents, are quite skeptic about foreigners in general. So they didn't know me in person. We talked a little bit, but for them it was not like a easy thing to accept that their son would have a foreigner as a partner. But when I arrived to India, I felt very welcome. And I also think I'm quite good at adapting to cultures. Since I met Anish, I have been educating myself with the Indian culture, and because I really like it, also I have learned how to cook Indian food. I like the music, so I would have all these elements to share with them and to make them feel comfortable with me as well. So from the very beginning, they were very welcoming. I had very nice conversations with his parents, and they told me that at the beginning they were a little bit concerned about our relationship, but after they met me in person, they were accepting me as their daughter-in-law, and that they were very happy that their son found someone good for him.
It's very interesting because I've had some podcast guests already where one part is from India. And I've heard that quite often that in the beginning, the family is a little bit skeptical when they hear that the son or the daughter is dating someone from a different country. I've also heard that at some point it even gets so far where once they accept you into the family that they're very protective over you. What is your experience with this?
Yeah. Well, I think something good is that Indian culture and Latin American culture is quite similar in the sense that we have big communities, that we care about the community. And we are also cultures that we care about family. So we are very family oriented people. And I think they realize that I have these values on me as well. So as soon as they got to know me a little bit more, they were happy, and they keep telling me that they feel that I am not a foreigner, that I am almost like an Indian for them. And now they treat me like a daughter, really. So they have been really, really open and welcoming in their family. And now I feel really like I have a family in India. I have been able to have this close relationship with them as well.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing this. This is like very interesting as well to know that they were a little bit skeptical in the beginning. And then once they got to know you, they basically just threw it overboard and they were like, yes, that's our daughter, our family member. And would you say, because as you've mentioned, you've prepared yourself, so you're very interested in learning in general about different cultures. When coming to India, when landing in Mumbai, did you have to deal with culture shock, or were you able to prepare yourself for anything that could potentially expect you there?
I think one can only prepare, yeah, until a certain level, because I knew some things. I really read and saw so many videos, but once you are there, then you realize, okay, there are some things that no one can prepare you for. I think that how you welcome these things as well, because I think I also prepare myself in a way that I will say I am going with an open mind to whatever happens once I'm there. I will welcome it and with curiosity, and I will just learn and like accept it, because that's my mindset in any different environment. So when I arrived there, in general, I was said I'm lucky that Mumbai is a very developed city. The family of my husband, they are very, I would say, like not traditional. They are more open-minded, and they are also open to other cultures in general. But still, they have their own things. So, for instance, for many people, it will be weird to see, I don't know, Indians eating with the hand that they, I don't know, they sit on the ground to sometimes have their meals. They are very superstitious in general. And these are things that just shocked you, or also, yeah, it's surprising, but they are not necessarily bad things. It's just a different way of doing things. So in my head, it was always like this. Okay, yeah, maybe that's different, but I will try to adapt myself and just go with the flow also during my stay there.
Where's your cultural awareness coming from? Do you know? Is it a curiosity in general? Because is it because you've traveled a lot beforehand? Do you know where it's coming from? Is it the way you were raised? It's very interesting.
I guess could be the way I was raised. I didn't have the chance to travel that much, and I didn't have too many international friends. In Ecuador, we don't have too many foreigners and too much contact with foreigners in general. But I was always interested in different things. And I think for me, what is the most important thing is to be able to connect with people. So in the end, every single person is a different person. But if you can connect with the values that you have, then the outside thing is just decoration. I would say it's like it's a matter of habits, of traditions, but each of us have a different way of doing things. So I just learned to go without judgment and just go with the flow and understand. And that has helped me also a lot, because it's like I adapt to different cultures and adapt to different ways of doing things, and has helped me to connect with people from all over the world and understand that in the end we share certain values, and that's what matters.
Definitely, definitely. And it comes obviously also once you get out in the world and you just realize that your beliefs and the values you have, that obviously everyone has their story, everyone has their cultural difference, everyone has their upbringing, but that those factors are no reason to prejudge anyone. It's just, again, for me, it's very interesting that you had this before traveling even or before moving abroad, that there's a lot of curiosity, at least this is what I sense, that led you to where you're nowadays, which is living in Germany, learning a new language and living together with someone from India. In my opinion, it's definitely something you can be very, very proud of, that you've managed that you've overcome all the challenges. And also it sounds like the way you approached hurdles, you've approached them in a quite healthy way. Like your glass is always full, not empty, and you took it as an opportunity to even learn more. And also in a very, very fast or very quick manner. But yeah, I'm very curious to learn more about your love story. I'm very curious to learn more about how it went on from seeing his family in Mumbai, getting back to Germany, getting back to Berlin, because I know that's not the end of your story yet. So we still have a few years in between. What happened?
Yeah, so after I met his family, I think we were more decisive that okay, I we got the approval from their side as well. So we said, okay, we are good to go. We decided to move together, to move in together. We always talked about also getting married at some point, but it was not really sure when. We always thought like, okay, we need to go step by step, make things happen. So since I moved to Germany, it was not the main goal to immediately get married and I don't know, just live together as soon as possible, but make sure that I was in stable grounds. So once I finished my studies, once I had like a stable job, and Anish was also working, then we said, okay, now is the time to take another step and maybe formalize this, although we were already living together. So when we decided to get engaged, we decided to plan when we were going to celebrate the engagement. That was in 2023. We decided to have the engagement in India and then start planning for the big wedding under the Indian tradition in 2024, which happened last year in November.
How was it?
It was an intense time, but beautiful. It was amazing. We had my family coming from Ecuador, my parents, my sister, my aunt, and we had also I had friends from Ecuador coming as well. For me, it was amazing to have people from the other side of the world coming only for my wedding. And also we had friends from here, from Europe, traveling to India. We had 3 days of celebration with all these ceremonies, tradition. I felt myself as a guest because I didn't understand much of what was happening, but at the same time, I was just enjoying being part of the whole celebration and the rich culture that they have. So it was amazing. It was a wonderful time.
And your family, how did they handle the whole situation of being in India?
Yeah, I definitely have learned from them to be open minded in general because they were also from before going to India, they were watching videos, they were educating themselves. They will come with different questions to me like, how do they do this? And what do we need to take? And what do we need to say when we meet Anish parents? Or what do we need to do in this specific situation? And once they were there, they went only with the flow. Like they felt very welcome. They would talk to, although they don't master English. My mom talks a little bit of English, but my dad doesn't talk English. He will be talking to everyone in the family of Anish. They got along very good. They were dancing in the wedding. We had the dance show. They were enjoying. They were dressed up with all these Indian clothes. So yeah, for them it was also an amazing opportunity to be there.
Yeah, because I feel like those events are the perfect opportunities to merge cultures as well. And just to see, like, to just be an outstander and just watching your family enjoying themselves and just talking to everyone while they're not speaking the same language, but somehow they manage to communicate. Must have been just so lovely to see that, a little bit emotional here and there maybe as well. So I'm really happy that you were able to merge your families, that they were able to get to know each other. I've mentioning this a couple of times already, because even though Natch and I, we know each other since 10 years already, which is crazy, we have not managed to bring our families together yet in person. So they know each other via video, but hopefully my family will be able, or at least my parents will be able to visit us next year in Buenos Aires. We see how that goes. Hopefully it's going to happen. But I'm also very curious to see how it will end up. And also the reason why we weren't able yet to merge families is because my suegra, my mother-in-law, she's a little bit older and she wouldn't be able to just fly several hours to Europe. So I'm really, really hoping that next year is the year where they finally meet, because it's time after 10 years. And so I'm really happy that you had this, which brings me to another question. What is your future going to look like? Do you have anything planned for the next few years? Or is it for you just going with the flow and just seeing where it's going to lead you?
I think we are quite used to go with the flow. So, and I think it has worked for us a lot, that not to have too big expectations about the future. But in general, I think we will both like to enjoy our married life. We keep learning from each other every day, and we keep working on ourselves as well as individuals. But having a partner there to support you, it's also an extra motivation. And then it's always nice to see how the time goes, but also how you change as an individual. And then as a couple also, we see that there is an evolution. Sometimes we talk about, oh, do you remember how were our conversations when we just started talking? Now we are living together in a flat in Berlin. Now we have our families knowing each other. Now we have friends here. So I think we are just enjoying this time, and for the future also, we think about, at least for the close future, to continue living in Germany. But we are open to whatever the future brings to us. If we need to move to another country here in Europe, I think we will be open to that. Or if it happens that we need to move to either of our countries, India or Ecuador, I think we will have to just make the decision when the time comes. I don't think so.
Thank you so much, Emi, for sharing your love story. I would like to end the conversation here, unless there is something else you would like to add.
I don't think so.
Because that was just the perfect ending. I love how open-minded you are, how you just go with the flow. I feel like out of the conversation, there's just very short conversation we had. For my part, I've learned so much. That this is just like staying open, staying curious, not taking things too serious, and then just seeing what happens, being brave and just leaving your comfort zone. I mean, I do that at the moment every time now that we're living in Buenos Aires, and I'm sure you're doing too. And yeah, again, what you've just shared with us in the middle of the podcast episode, where you've shared that everything you're doing is a learning. So even though if you feel like the decision you've made might not just be the right one anymore, you are the one, first of all, that can change the decision, like that's in power of making a different decision. And if it would have been in your case, for example, going back to Ecuador, it's not like you've been failing. It's okay, you've had the opportunity, you took the opportunity. This was a huge learning. You've learned another language. And again, what is the next step for me to work with what I've just learned? So I really loved our conversation. So I just love how positive you are. As always, I will link, hopefully it's okay if I link your Instagram profile in the side note and
Yes.
in the description. Okay, so I will do that. So for everyone who would love to connect with Emi and who would love to learn more about her story, feel free to connect with her on Instagram. You will find the link in the description and in the side note of the podcast episode. And yeah, with this being said, enjoy your evening in Germany. And thank you so much again for being my guest today.
Thank you very much, Tina. I really enjoyed the conversation as well.